Hi, I'm Rashonda. I'm the creator of artbyrow.com, where I help hobby artists grow by teaching them how to focus on the process rather than the outcome. I specialize in developing creativity, creating more art in less time, and using graffiti art to generate ideas instead of always wondering what you should be working on. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, subscribe so you get notified whenever new videos get uploaded. Now let's head on over to the art studio and do some drawings. We're going to work on today's tutorial together. Let's head on over. Okay, so today we are going to be looking at drawing some cubes, and this is for the purpose of having a starting point for anything that you want to draw in 3D that would be a cube shape. So anything that looks like a square, a rectangle, or something that would have that general shape to it. So things like a car, for example. I'm not somebody who draws cars, but if you were to draw cars, the starting point would be a rectangle, a three-dimensional rectangle if you were drawing the car in 3D. So if you've seen some of my other videos, you know I like to start with just some general shapes, some circles, ovals, whatever we need to get the basic structure down. So if we want to do something that looks three-dimensional, we need to follow those same concepts of building out from a starting point, getting the structure down first. However, I personally do not like using a ruler and vanishing points when I'm drawing my 3D drawings, because I'm typically doing them just for fun, for relaxation. I don't enjoy the process of drawing in 3D using a ruler and vanishing points and getting really technical. But I am going to go through just real quick. Let me adjust this real quick. Just some basic perspective 1.2 point. So, and today we're just going to be looking at cubes. So there's just generally speaking, just to keep things simplified, we're going to look at 1 point and 2 point. And I'm using a black colored pencil today just to try to pick it up on the camera a little bit better. I didn't want to try using a marker with the ruler because it messes up the marker and the ruler gets all messy. So we're going to try this with a colored pencil and hopefully you can see it. So for 1 point perspective, you have one vanishing point. And this vanishing point can be anywhere you want it to be on your paper. It can be as far out as you want it to be, for how deep you want your 3D plane to go. And you have one vanishing point, so this is your vanishing point. And then what you would do if you're doing proper perspective is to go from that vanishing point to your corners. And you would be looking at the cube, the 3D square, you would be looking at it from the front. And then what you would do is wherever you want this to end, however thick you want the 3D part of it to be, you would draw these lines coming down here. This line and this line would be parallel to each other, and the same for this one and this one. That's important because if you're doing something that isn't perfectly straight, you need to understand that concept so you can get everything in proper perspective. So if we're doing a 2 point perspective, so this is our 1 point perspective, it's got one vanishing point. If we want to do a 2 point perspective, we're going to have two vanishing points. So you would have your horizon line, and you would have wherever your we're going to make a cube again. Anywhere where your cube would be, you're going to have that front corner drawn first. And then this is one vanishing point, and that's two vanishing points. And then from there, you would go from each end of that line. And then the same thing on the other side. Okay, and hopefully the camera picks that up enough. Hopefully it's dark enough you can see this. And then we're also going to do the same thing as we did over here. We want to keep this parallel to each other. And then the same thing over here. And it doesn't have to be even. So this can go all the way out here if we wanted it to. The important thing is you want to keep these lines all parallel with each other. So now, because our vanishing point is lower than where our cube is, we need to draw this bottom part. And we go to there, and we're coming from these lines that we just drew. And then we're going to there. So here's our bottom edge of our cube. Okay? So this is 2-point perspective because it has two vanishing points, and we have 1-point perspective with one vanishing point. So when you have 1-point perspective, you see the front plane of the cube, and when you're doing 2-point, you see multiple, you see it from a corner, basically. So you see this side and this side, and then of course your depth to it. Okay, so this is a proper way to draw in perspective. However, when I do my drawings, when I'm working with, especially if you're using it just as a starting point for your drawings, I find this to be very tedious. And if you're just roughing it out because you're going to build off of it, you don't need this detailed and this precise of a drawing because you're going to put something over top of it. So let's look at a way to do some freehand three-dimensional drawings just to kind of speed it up a little bit and to make it a little less tedious and just more relaxing for your drawings. All right, so this is, I guess, just a little trick, a hack, whatever you want to call it, for drawing 3D cubes. And it works. It's not proper perspective, but if you're just sketching something out, you're doing a quick drawing and you don't want to use a ruler, or if you're just getting a base for the base structure for what you're drawing, then you don't necessarily want to use a ruler. If you're doing, this works really well if you're doing like daily drawings. So back years ago, and I don't know if it's still as popular as it was, but there was a book called, I think it was called Everyday Matters, I believe it was called. And they had all these drawing prompts where you just went around and drew everyday objects that were in front of you from your home. And if you're not familiar with this, drawing from life is the best way that you can learn how to draw. So if you were doing something like these drawing challenges, so one could be draw a speaker, draw your television, draw a table or a dresser or a chair. They're just objects in your house. So if you look at a chair, the overall shape of a chair is a cube. If you're looking at it in real life, it's three-dimensional. It's really a cube or a three-dimensional rectangle. And if you're just sketching these things from life, you're not going to use vanishing points in a ruler. Maybe you are. But if you're just doing a quick sketch, you don't want to use proper perspective. It would take the enjoyment and the whole purpose of drawing from life out of it. But there's a few things, if you keep in mind, that will help your perspective look more believable and more realistic, and it won't look, if your perspective's off, your drawing's going to look really wonky. So for me personally, trying to visualize where this one point is and getting everything out there, which you could, but a really easy way to draw a 3D cube without using a ruler is to just keep these lines parallel to each other. And if you do that, it will look convincing enough. And then you want these lines parallel. And here parallel. And then these lines, instead of converging to one vanishing point, you can just make them parallel with each other. And that will look convincing enough, especially for a base to draw off of. If you want to then make this an object, it's convincing enough that you don't have to get out your ruler, which then would mean you would need a surface to draw on to keep it straight so you can use your ruler and your vanishing point. So if you're just freehand sketching something, this is a good hack or trick or whatever you want to call it, just so you can get that basic structure down, your 3D structure of your underdrawing. So I hope that makes sense. And again, it's not proper perspective, but if you're doing something just freehand and you don't want to go through the trouble of using vanishing points and all of that, then that will speed things up a little bit and make it so if you're out sketching and all you have is a sketchbook and a pencil, you can keep your three-dimensional drawings looking fairly convincing, right? Because if things are off, it's going to look funky, it's going to look wonky, and you're not going to be happy with your drawing. So I hope this was helpful. So how did you do? Hopefully you followed along with the tutorial and worked on your own artwork. If you enjoyed this and you want to get notified of other lessons that are coming up in the future, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and you'll get notified whenever something new gets uploaded. Have a good day and happy creating!